so it's not shown. By the way, yeah, now it should work. For those who didn't see, you can watch or your colleagues can watch the online videos in YouTube, and hopefully they will remain there also for a longer period.
I can see the new video,
okay.
The live video.
So do we wait another minute or shall we start?
We could wait for a minute or two.
I agree.
Okay, I think we can start. If somebody cannot come soon enough, then they can still watch it online.
Okay. Thank you so much. It is my great pleasure to be participant in this discussion panel. And even it's a matter of pride of being one of organizers. And what I will talk about is rent control in semi-periphery, referring to the region of Southeast and what is in the recent period framed as an East Central European countries in terms of the former Eastern Europe. Just a moment. Just a moment. It's okay. Okay, it works. So this is what I try to do as a part of my PhD thesis is a cross-country and cross-regional comparison. And my main units of comparison were interwar Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, Poland, and Czechoslovakia. So this rent control issue was only one chapter of my PhD, dealing with different phenomena of this global retreat from a market economy and this high expansion of state intervention in economy as a consequence of the huge impact by First World War. So I try to pair countries, or to make a pair or doublets of countries representing regions. So we have Southeast Europe represented by Yugoslavia and Bulgaria. We have East Central Europe represented by Poland and Czechoslovakia. We have Central Europe represented by Germany and Austria. Western Europe represented by UK and France, and Scandinavia represented by Sweden and Finland. These regions outside of my main countries under comparison are provided only as an asymmetrical comparison, so to provide a global context. So I tried hard to deal also with the statistical account, tried to apply also lexemetric as explained by Konstantin Volodin. And also I tried to provide something like a tool which might be useful in this comparison. So I tried to construct a 6 stages development typology from what might be considered the laissez-faire or this uncontrolled rents of before 1914 across moratorium provision which applied only to the families of conscript. Then this intermediary stage of moratorium provisions coupled with the rent control system, then a universal rent control system, then requisitioning that was very harsh in the region that I'm covering, and finally the stage 6 confiscation applied only in Soviet Union, so it is irrelevant in terms of the countries that I was dealing with. And here you can see how it functioned when you place it in the chart. You can see the point 1 refers to the laissez-faire regime. Point 4 refers to the universal rent control, and this is how it worked from 1914 until 1938 in Western Europe, where I was tracing this chronological pattern of the intensity of the state involvement with the property ownership and within relationship between landlords and tenants from 1914 until 1938, and for each of these doublets of countries, I found also the average pattern, which is which refers to the arithmetic middle in between the points of one and another state. So this is what provides an outline of Western European developments. This is what refers to Central Europe. So we have developments in terms of the intensity. Well, I have some construction going on behind my back, but I will manage to do my presentation. So this is how things were advancing in Central Europe. This is what was going on in Southeast Europe. You can see that there was a problem of dealing with the pre-1918 territories because Yugoslavia was newly created country. So I separated different regions and trying to trace the development of housing regulations in Serbia and Croatia, Slavonia, also Dalmatia, but I didn't put it in this presentation. The more difficult situation is with Poland and Czechoslovakia because of all these complicated partitions and this Austrian and Hungarian crown land that you are supposed to take into account. Then this complicated slide, this chart representing the overall dynamics of development of state intervention, at least in legal level, in terms of what was legally framed. You can see in this chart where I put together Central Europe, East Central Europe, Southeast Europe, Western Europe, Scandinavia. It requires some time, to differentiate between these dots and this graphic patterns in order to see what is going on. But generally, what we can see is that the only two regions throughout Europe that actually effectively returned to the laissez-faire regime were Bulgaria and Yugoslavia, which refers to Southeast Europe and also Scandinavian countries. I was detecting this issue through the developments in Sweden and Finland. I don't have time in this 15 minutes to make an overall assessment of this. Perhaps at the very end, if I manage to see that we have time actually for a longer elaboration. So what I'm trying to do here is only to provide you with highlights of my previous research. Here you can see what is the residual purchasing power of the pre-war rent through calculation when you relate it to the living cost index, which refers to inflation rates, and also with the fixed rent index. And you could see that this residual is almost is almost a negative, or completely wasted in Austria and Germany, that come up to only several percentages. In the region that I was dealing with, in Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, it come up to something like between 10 and 20%. In Czechoslovakia, 33%. So through this measurement, with all limitations and the reservation that may be taken into account, we could see how harsh state intervention was actually, and to what extent the landlords were actually were under pressure. So what I also try to deal with in addition to the qualitative or this attempt to make a measurement of the state intervention, I was dealing also with the qualitative analysis. And here you can see one receipt for the bureaucratic catastrophe in terms of the harsh state intervention in the moment when the human infrastructure that you're counting on is actually on a very low level of the accountability, because of the deterioration of material status of the state personnel. Also, the impact of the First World War was obvious. So we have tripartite arbitration committees that were presided over by underpaid state representatives, which opened up the window for the extortion, for the sophisticated or less sophisticated extortion schemes on part of both the proprietors or would-be. So they extorted both the proprietors or would-be tenants. They were racketeering the owners. Actually, they blackmailed them. They would threaten them that they will requisition part of their apartments, and then they would ask the bribe in order to save their property. And in the same, in a similar manner, they exploited the would-be tenants by telling them that they should pay some bribe to the housing authorities in order to be provided with the suitable accommodation. There was also abuse of subtenancy on the part of these poorly paid state officials. So in one case in Yugoslavia, I found a situation where housing authorities would requisition a house. So when you requisition a housing unit, it is not a violation of the property ownership. So the owner still owns this housing unit, whether it is the whole apartment or the part of the apartment. But there was a restriction in terms of how they could dispose with this property. So this property was actually provided to a person in a need, or some state official or whatever might be a ground for this. And what they did in this corruptionist scheme is that they would requisition housing unity. Then they would provide the guy who was the part of this corruptionist enterprise, and then he would sublet it. And this is the moment where this abuse of subtenancy is coming into question. He would sublet it to another person, of course, for the substantial payment of the bribe. So they would extort the money in order to make a sort of handover of the tenancy rights to another person. So we had again a sort of the market economy reviving, but through this abuse of subtenancy status. So you did not have anymore the trade in the commodities or in the housing ownership. So it was not the owners that could trade with their property, but those who were entitled to have this tenancy status, and who, of course, abused it. And here I thought of providing you an example of the clientelism in Yugoslavia. I don't know how much time do we have. Perhaps, Konstantin, you could tell me?
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Only 2 minutes.
Yep.
So this might be a good case of reverse clientelism, namely in administrative terms, both the president of the corresponding housing authority and the president of the housing court were administrative subordinates of this guy, Stojadinovic. And his controlled rent was 10% of its market value. And of course, the court increased rent by an insignificant amount. So here we have this case of reverse clientelism, where the resources were redistributed by clients and in favor of patron, which is not actually often the case. Here I have the examples of the corruption and abuse by housing courts in Sofia. We don't have time for this. Also, here we have this widespread schemes of trading in tenancy rights. We don't have time to go through it. I also thought of telling you about landlord and tenants associations that provided that organized the great rallies and aggressive lobbying. And I also thought of telling you about the leftist origins of the tenants association, but then when they figure out that this might harm their interest group affiliation and interest, they, especially after the Communist Party resorted to the terrorist tactics in political terms, they start retreating towards the independent path of the independent interest groups. And also at the very end, they formulated their interests as political parties in the local and municipal elections. It was similar with landlords. They were finally frustrated by the outcomes and disappointed with the political parties. Here I have this lamentation by one of those persecuted, as they consider themselves, and their willingness to make a political party because they thought this was the only way how to make a change in the system. Then I was dealing also with the everyday life, this routine of the daily routine of the life, the physical violence that included also the murder cases I have in Yugoslavia and Poland. I have also self-destructive homeowners, for instance, almost the same case in Poland and in Belgrade in Yugoslavia, of the landowners who took off the tiles from their roof in order to move out the tenants. So they were eager to destroy their own property in order to free themselves from this burden of the regulation. I think we don't have much time. In the final remarks, I wanted to say that that my impression is that it is good to combine this quantitative and qualitative approach. I think that it might be useful that the sum of the measurements relating to this drastic changes caused by this first generation of the rent control system might be under some reservations, of course, and restrictions. They could be useful and for this meaningful retrospect of the development of the housing regulations in global terms. Also, the developmental typology proposed here, I don't have time even to confess, to make a confession of what I figure out might be a problematic or where I am reserved. So at the bottom level and on a zero ground, what I consider to be useful is really in terms of this legal framework. So I didn't come up to point to have this full relationship in between enforceability and what was legally provided as a framework. But and it might be a tricky. I tried through this qualitative analysis to come closer to what was going on in the reality, but at least on legal level, this study and this what I'm doing previous years provides a solid insights, and especially into the development of the legal notion of tenancy as opposed and confronted with the notion of the ownership in this semi-periphery in interwar of interwar Europe. So thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Aleksandar. I think we don't have, unfortunately, time for discussion. Maybe during the roundtable there will be some people desiring to talk about this topic.